We're starting Be'ez Hashem, Vayoel Moshe, Siman Lamed Aleph. And this is really a new section of the Sefer, because up till now, Rabbi was talking about the pshat in the Shevuos of Shalosh, and then the pshat in Shalosh, and he asked several kashas about Rashi's pshat, that the Chikas HaKetz means davening too much. And now he's ready to start a general discussion of what the Shevuos is. So let's read it. U'levayir kol ha'inyan, to explain the whole subject of the Shalosh Shevuos. Ro'isi lahayir eze ha'aras be'inyan zeh. I want to ask a few questions about this subject. Reishis, the first question, Sarach lahavin, we have to know, Madua hishmid Rambam zal b'hilchoisa b'sefer Yad es ha'Shevuos halalu. Why did the Rambam leave out these oaths from his Sefer Hayad, from the Mishnah Torah?
Yeah, because Zionists all commonly argue the Rambam never paskin them. That's in fact a very common argument. And they even further argue the Rambam says in the Mishnah Torah that you don't need any other halakha sefer, once you study mine.
Right. Which
means that the Rambam didn't say them. It's someone, and it's not halakha.
Right.
Or sure, I got it. Just stories.
Right. But the rule is with the Rambam that any time you see the Rambam leave something out, you have to work on it. You have to figure out why he left it out. Where in the Rambam
because the Rambam only wrote the general rule, but there's so much to delve into.
Right. Okay. He
says, it's another point that the Rebbe says that the Rambam only wrote Klalim, and there are many pram delve into. Right? The Rosh says whoever just learns the Rambam, learns the Gemara, will come to the other.
Yeah, that's going to be in this.
He doesn't have the prat.
That's going to be in this Siman.
Yeah.
Shehema mivuarim b'Gemara b'li shum cholik. The Shevuos are written in the Gemara, and there's no one who argues on them. So why should the Rambam not paskin like them? Ki Rabbi Yehuda Reb Zera, those two Amoraim in Ksuvas, pligi rak befirish hagimel Shevuos. They just argue about the meaning of them, of the oaths. Im shaykh gam b'yachid ho'el mibavel. If you go like Rabbi Yehuda, that it applies even to a yachid, or maybe it applies only to a large group, like Reb Zera. Aval al aliyah b'choyma. But the etzem fact that there's such a thing as aliyah b'choyma, that everyone together goes up, is an aveira, and also the chikas haketz, forcing the end of galus with actions. Leis man depalig, there's no one who argues. Be'elu ha'shvuos. B'chol divrei hashas, and the whole shas, you never find anyone arguing. V'gam kol ha'midrashim maleim mizeh. All the midrashim are full of the Shevuos. You see the Medrash Rabbah we brought before, and in Shiur Shirim. Umadua hishmitam. So why did the Rambam leave it out? Even though it's not such a common occurrence that people should try to be over on the Shevuos, and this is really a teretz he's saying for the other poskim, the Shulchan Aruch, the other poskim, why they didn't bring it down, because he says it's not often that it comes up. Ki'im le'itim rechoikis, only once in a 1,000 years, let's say. V'derech ha-poskim lahashmit in yanim ke'elu. The regular poskim, like the Shulchan Aruch and the other poskim that go on the stage of the Shulchan Aruch tour, right?
Yeah, because these are a lot to violate Shevuos, you need to have a very wild, big field of Zionists that.
Right, you have to
to build weapons and buy in the black market and do these terrible acts, which, by the way, these things are already bad things, or already violations. Like to bring something dangerous to the house, for example, like to weapons, etc., etc.
So, lahashmit. So it's normal for the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah and the Beis Yosef to leave these things out. It's like halachas of Yimoisa Mashiach. When Mashiach is going to come, he's going to come this way, he's going to come that way. There's no Hilchas Mashiach in Shulchan Aruch.
Right. Well, I guess
the Rambam has Hilchas Mashiach. The Rambam has Hilchas Malachim in the end of Hilchas Malachim.
But Mashiach is something we have to apply to our time. In a sense, we have to oil Mashiach every day. So in a sense, it's a very common obligation to always wait for Mashiach.
Right, to wait for Mashiach is part of the halacha, but to do anything,
and even the Chafetz
how he's going to come,
says that to study Karbonos in a sense is part of their life, because when we study Karbonos, we're sure we're waiting for Mashiach. We're studying halacha which we want to be restored already. But these Shevuos, which are so hard to violate, unless you're such a rasha that you would actually do something as wild as Zion, like build up a whole army and buy something black on the market and attack, that's something very far-fetched to violate, but Rachmanos was violated as far-fetched as it seems.
Right. Or it could be that the Shulchan Aruch didn't have to say it, because it was so obvious. that it's written on many other subjects like this, that poskim have written that the Shulchan Aruch left things out because they were obvious. Like, let's say the Yud Gimel Ani Ma means.
Right, there is a God.
There is a God. That doesn't say it in Shulchan Aruch. There's a Mishnah Berurah right at the beginning in the Bir Halacha in Siman Aleph. He says that there's 6 mitzvahs tamidius, right? Ki hai gavna. So other inyanim similar to this, we say that the Shulchan Aruch left out. Aval HaRambam Zal haloi darkoi lahav yakol. The Rambam brings everything.
Right, even the mitzvah to believe in God, for example.
Right.
At the beginning, we saw the Torah.
Uva hakdama sefer mitzvahs. So now he wants to say a shtichel teretz here. Not a teretz, but the beginning of how we're going to answer the question. Uva hakdama sefer mitzvahs. The beginning, the introduction to Sefer Mitzvahs. Kosev Rambam Zal shebechiburoi. He says, in my big work that I'm about to write, Kavanase al Sefer Hayad, Kol Dinei HaTorah. I included all the dinim of the Torah, umishpotel, all the laws, ad shelo yiyeh davar chaser mimenu, that there won't be anything missing from it, and v'chulu shum shaila, there won't be any question. Shum shayla tzricha shaloi ezkro, that I won't mention. Oi ezkor shoirish, or at least I'll mention the root. Teitze mimenu hashayla, that from that you can decide that question.
Right, the one they leave out. They say the Rambam said they want nothing left, but they leave out the second part where he said, "I'll write the root of everything as shayla." For that they leave out.
So the Rambam writes right. So you have to figure out where this halacha is.
From this root, based
on something that the Rambam says.
Right, because the modern Orthodox, they also use it as an excuse not to learn. Go to the Rambam, you got everything, you don't need to ask anymore. But the second word said, I read the root of everything. We can ask based on what I say.
So nimza lefi zeh sheyesh dvarim shaloi hizkir beferish. You see, there are things that the Rambam doesn't speak out explicitly. Ela samach al mashakasav hashoresh. He relies on the fact that he wrote the shoresh. Shemimenu teitze hashaylahi. That he wrote the root. He wrote the basis for which you could decide the question. Ve'al kolpanim tzarchli hispoinen b'divrei Rambam. We have to look into the Rambam and see. The Rambam zal heichan nizkar b'dvar shoresh ho'inyan. Where is the root of this matter mentioned in his words? Shemimenu hispoinen daitu zal binyan zed. From that we can decide what he holds about the Shalosh Shevuos. Because by the way, the Zionists come and say the Rambam didn't bring the Shalosh Shevuos. Well, the Rambam has to bring it either way. Whether you hold the Shalosh Shevuos are in effect or they're not in effect, the Rambam has to say something about it, right? He has to tell us it's not in effect. Yeah. Also ask the kasha on them. Throw the kasha back at them. They say the Rambam left it out. Well, why did the Rambam not say like you? In other words, everybody has to find in the Rambam somewhere,
as he said himself, you find everything I say. Yes,
a makor to what you think he holds about this question. Everyone has the same job here to look at the Rambam and figure out what he holds. V'hinei b'igeres Teiman herich Rambam zal tuva b'inyan bias HaMashiach. You know the letter that the Rambam wrote to the Yemenite Jews, that they had a false Mashiach there, and they wrote letters to the Rambam asking him what to do. And there was a gzeira from the king. He was making gzeiras against the Yidden, Shmad, and things like that. So they wrote these.
And then he claimed he would be Mashiach from this king.
So the Rambam wrote back a long letter which explained all the yisoyos of Emunah and Bias HaMashiach, and he gave them
this letter is purchasable. You can buy it from a store, could you?
Yeah, it's printed in Igros Rambam, and I have it copied off part of it here.
All right, but you can get it like a Zebra, for example, or Eichler's, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Show you. But it doesn't come separately. I think it comes as
from part of the
Igros Rambam.
Yeah.
Okay, so. V'shama hiskir mo'ed shaloi lav. He's here mo'ed. There, the Rambam warns very strongly shaloi lav or aleilu shvuos, not to transgress these oaths. V'kosav shachas v'shalom sakana atzum b'davar. And he writes that it's a big danger to transgress the oaths.
Well, how do the Zionists say that they made a refuge for Jews? It says openly otherwise. Like the Maamar even says, it's very, very dangerous, to break the shvuos.
So look at page 1 here. I just have the copy of the last couple of pages of the Rambam's Yigeres Teiman. He says, "V'kasher hoidia shloimei alav hashalom." Now, the Rebbe is going to bring these words, or maybe he did already in Siman Chafdal, but this is a slightly different translation. So, because it was originally written in Arabic, so slightly different translation, but it's the same idea. V'kasher hoidia shloimei alav hashalom. Shlomo Melech made known in his Shir Shirim, Ruach HaKodesh, that this nation, when it's sunken into galus, it will try to wake up. and try to get up and rise from Golos, bezulas ita, not at the proper time, haru'uyah, that's proper for it, v'yamusu ba'avuzeh, and they'll die because of this, v'yasigum tsaros, and troubles will come upon them because of this. He's Yirmiyahu. So Shlomo Melech warned them against this, v'hishpia Allah v'altzad mashal, and he made a shvua on the Jews with a mashal, al derech mashal in all translations. And the mashal, we're going to get to what that means, but Pashup Shat, the mashal just means because Shiur is a mashal. Shiur is a mashal from the Yidden are like a woman, and Hashem is like the man. But the Rabbi is going to have his own shot in what this mashal is a little later.
Even article says that their translation is allegorical. They don't translate like they do other books.
Right. Ve'amar, and he says, Hishbati eschem b'nois Yerushalayim, I make you swear, daughters of Jerusalem. Ve'atem achenu ahuvenu, you, our brothers, our friends in Yemen, shimru hashpa'asoi, keep his oath, v'loi to'iru es ha'avad shetechbatz. Don't do any actions to arouse the love before the end. So the Rambam's warning, this is what he means, that the Rambam warns in Yigeres Tema not to be over on the Shalosh Shevuos. So the question is, in Yad, in Mishnah Torah, he doesn't bring the Shalosh Shevuos, and in Yigeres Tema he does bring it. So what do you go after? Yeah, you want to determine the Rambam's point of view about the Shalosh Shevuos. Do you go after the Yad, or you go after Yigeres Tema?
Well, the argument is Yigeres Tema is just a guy that's all what it's all about. But he was just telling you what to do. That's they were in a hard situation. They wrote to Rambam, what do we do? It's like more because whenever you have a Shiur with Rabbi, you write a letter, he answers back. He doesn't tell you some random words. Especially in those days where mailing a letter was expensive and long. I don't think they would write to the Rambam just to have some fun writings back. Because writing letter back then, was a painstaking process.
Yeah, it's a halacha tshuva, the Yigeres Tema. We learn up from every word in it. Anyway, he says, but the question is, which one is the final word about the Rambam Shita? So he says, "Ve'ein lanu yediyah eizeh mehem kasav b'achronim." We don't know which of the two was written later. You know, which one could be the psak. Mm-hmm. Because the Yigeres Tema was written in about the year 1173. The way they figured that out is because later on the Rebbe is going to bring another letter the Rambam wrote to the Chachamim in France, and he wrote them that 22 years ago, he wrote the date on that letter, and then he wrote 22 years ago this story happened in Yemen with the false Mashiach. So calculating backwards, we figure out that the story happened in around the year 1173 or 1174. The Mishnah Torah was being written around that time. We don't know when he finished it exactly, but around the time between 1172, 1178, around those years he was writing the Mishnah Torah. So they were about the same time. We don't know which one is the final word. Okay. Oid harbe inyanim kosav sham b'Yigeres Tema. There are many things that the Rambam writes in Yigeres Tema b'inyan b'yis HaMashiach. Sheba hashkafa rishoyin nir lichoyer sheyesh bohem eiz stir l'mash kosav b'Sefer Yad. That it looks like there are contradictions between the Yigeres Tema and things that he writes in the Yad. But if you look carefully, you'll see that there's no stira. Now, just to know what he means, just to look ahead a little bit in Vayoel Moshe, it says Siman Lamed Zayin. Take a look. A few pages later. There was a story about a person claiming to be Mashiach. He demonstrated some miracles, right? He pretended he could do Tchias HaMesim. Many Jews got, swept up in the movement. The cost of Shamba Arichas Harbe Moed. The Rambam writes a long Arichas there. He said he warns people not to believe in him.
What was this person's name who claimed to be Mashiach? What was his name?
I don't know. I don't think it says it anywhere in the Yigeres Tema or anywhere else. The Thomas Sham al Chacham, he's surprised. The Rambam is surprised at this Chacham who wrote him the letters, because he said the rest of the people of Yemen, okay, maybe they were just Amratzim, they didn't know anything, okay, but how could this Talmud Chacham not know that this is a false Mashiach? He said, how if you know the Sifrei Chachamim, how could you make such a mistake? The Rambam goes on at length to explain what Melech HaMashiach will be like. Shehu Navi Gadol Ma'oid. He'll be a very great prophet. V'Gadol Mikol HaNavim. He'll be more of a Navi than any other Navi, Milvad Moshe Rabbeinu. All of Hashem. Except for Moshe. He won't be greater than him. Gam Yichid Oisei.
What's that, the Rosh Tables?
Moshe Rabbeinu, all of Hashem. Gam Yichid Oisei Aboyri Yisparach Shmoi. That Hashem will give him unique gifts. B'dvarim Shelo Yichid Moshe Rabbeinu, all of Hashem. Things that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have. He'll give him some certain powers. What powers? Shenamar v'harichoi b'yiras Hashem. That he'll be able to smell in Yiras Hashem and be able to decide a din Torah based on the smell. V'loi l'mare einav yishpoit. He won't judge based on his eyes, maybe what his eyes see. V'goimer. This is the pasuk in Yishai, by the way. V'nocha olav ruach Hashem. The ruach Hashem will rest upon him. V'yamoid ish shaloi noida koyam heroisoi. A man who was unknown before he arose will arise. V'ha'oisos v'amoifsim she'yero al yadoi. The miracles that come up, that come through him, hein harayas al amitas yichusoi. They will be the proofs that he's really Mashiach.
But the Rambam says Mashiach doesn't have to bring those.
So this is what it's going to be. The Rebbe is asking here that in Yigeres Teimon he says the miracles are the proofs, right? In Yad he says they're not.
Mashiach doesn't have to make miracles, and he even says so the Torah that if a person makes miracles, you make him outside. Even the Rosh, every sure can make miracles.
Okay, so he says, it can't be that someone would become a Navi unless they have a lot of knowledge of Torah. He says, I could go through the whole Tanakh and bring proofs to what Mashiach will be like. His unique gifts, Yavhilu kol malchei eretz mishamoi. Everybody in the world, all the kings of the world will be scared of him. V'yivchadu v'tiboy malchusam. They'll like almost give up their power because of him. V'yinaklu eich, or maybe they'll be more like they'll try to keep their power and they'll look for ways eich lamoy kenegdo, how to stand up against him. B'cherev or bezulasoi. It's not that they will be able to deny him being Mashiach. No, they'll admit it, but they'll just try to fight him. Okay, so basically he says these things about Mashiach, and the problem is, take a look. To the last paragraph in Siman Lamed Zayin. Skip a little ahead over here on page Mem Tes. It starts with the word Amnam. Amnam tzarich lisbonim b'zeh shelichoyer b'ashkaf rishon adivei Rama meilu nirin k'stira neged mashakasa b'sefer Yad. It looks like a steer to the Yad. B'perek Yud Aleph Milchus Malachim Malacha Gimel. Al Ya'ale b'dait chasha Melech HaMashiach tzarich lasas oisus moifsim. Right? Don't think that he has to do miracles in mechadish dvarim ba'olam or mechayim mesim chayoytze b'dvarim elu. Ein adavar kach. He doesn't have to do tchias mesim. Shahar Rabbi Kiva hayanoise kelev shel ben koziva. Rabbi Kiva used to follow ben koziva and support him. V'dimahu v'chol chachmei doira shu melech HaMashiach. That Rabbi Kiva and all the chacham thought that ben koziva was melech HaMashiach. To get back to this, what he means by that, because Pasha the Gemara doesn't say that all the chacham held that way. Ad shenerag ba'avoinus, until he was killed through their sins. V'loy shalom menu chacham loy ois v'loy moifis. The chacham never asked Ben Koziva to make any miracles. Okay. So what's pshat in this steer in the Rambam? So take a look, Lamed Ches, beginning of Lamed Ches. Omnam b'ma'at hispoinus ein shum steer b'dvarav dehinei gam b'sefer Yad kasav achar kach v'ilchus malachim perek yud beis she navi. The Rambam in Yad also says that Mashiach will be a Navi. She's kabtzu el kol Yisrael v'yisyachzu kulam al piv b'ruach hakodesh shetanuch alav. That all the Jews will come to Mashiach and he'll be able to tell them what shevet they come from and their whole yichus, right, with his ruach hakodesh. So that's a miracle, right? That's not natural. V'hevi al zeh hakasiv ad amoid kohen l'urim v'tumim. Kitzer, I'm not going to read the whole thing now, but he says that Mashiach will have powers that are above, that are supernatural. but he won't do any physical miracles. He won't be
Making change in nature.
Right. But he himself will be a Navi, and part of being a Navi is supernatural, right? A Navi could tell the future, a Navi could tell if someone's Shevet.
A Navi can also speak to Hashem, directly and more. So a Navi could tell you what Shevet you're from. A Navi can even tell you what's your specific task in this world.
So that's going to be the basic teretz, that the Rambam doesn't hold that Mashiach can't do anything supernatural. He just holds that the world won't change. Okay, back to Lamed Aleph, okay?
Yes.
So, he says, Gam ma shelo hevi es hashvuos b'sefer hayad, meturetz b'tuv tam v'das kasher avar b'ezras Hashem yisbarach. So, in the same kind of way, I'm going to answer up how the Rambam could mention the Shevuos in Yigeres Teiman, but not in Sefer Hayad. Why doesn't he mention them in Yad? V'hinei, ilmale haya ez a stira. If there really would be a stira, may Yigeres Teiman l'Sefer Hayad. Haya makom safek ez mehem ikar. Then we would have a question, which one to follow, right? The V'tshuvas Ridvaz, Chelik Zayin Siman Chaf Hey, Kosav be'emtza tshuva al divrei Rambam Zal. The Ridvaz writes about this Rambam. V'hevi yodea she'afilu im tirtzu. The Ridvaz was a late Rishon, right? He lived in Egypt, and he was the one who wrote the Pirush on the side of the Rambam, and some of the parts of the Rambam. So he in his Shuvas he says, "V'hevi yodea she'afilu im tirtzu lo ymer she'atshuva chaluka al psak." Even if you're going to say the Rambam and his Tshuva argues on the psak, and there are some places when that happens, right? Al tshuva yesh lanu lismoich. One of the famous places, by the way, when this happens is by Kriyas HaTorah. The Rambam in this Tshuva says that you're allowed to do Kriyas HaTorah from Apostle Sefer Torah. And we're soymech on that la'alach in the Mechaber, and Siman Reish Kuf Mem Gimel. Mechaber says that if you find a psul in your Sefer Torah, you stop laning, take out a new Sefer Torah, but what you lane from the old one, you don't have to go back and lane, because you can be soymech on the Tshuvas Rambam that you're yoytze with the Apostle Sefer Torah. So this is an example of how.
What's a prohibited interior kosher then, if you're yoytze anyhow with the Apostle Sefer Torah?
For the sake of the mitzvah of Ksiva Sefer Torah.
Right.
Okay, so if there's a steer between the Tshuvas Rambam and the Psak of the Rambam, what do you do? So the Ridvaz says. He says, "Ala tshuva yesh lanu lismach." We rely on the tshuva. Shehi halacha l'maaseh, because that's when the Rambam is actually posting on a real practical question that arose.
Now you're reading a halacha, which Kuru Kanai, we hear about it real makes more sense.
Ava yesh plugta b'zeh, but there is a machlokes about this question. The Ridvaz is not unanimous opinion. V'chein hu plugta gedola eitz l'rosh. The same dispute applies to the Rosh. The Rosh could sometimes contradict what he writes in the Rosh on the back of the Gemara
or his
Shuvas. But this all applies when there's a real contradiction. But in such a case like this, Yigeres Teiman, where the Rambam goes on at length and explains something in his Tshuva, and he explains the reasons. The Heti called Divrei Hashas, and he copies down all the Gemaras about it. And in the Yad, he doesn't write anything. It's not just the stira; it's just that he doesn't write it there.
It doesn't have Shuvas at all.
So then it's different. He says, "V'chacham tzvizal b'tshuva siman yudalad kasav al stira sheyesh b'divrei Maarik." He says there was a stira in the Maarik.
Who's the Maarik?
Maarik was I think a early Achron. You could classify him that way. Maari or Yosef Cologne.
Where does he live?
I guess in Cologne. Cologne is between Germany and France. So
Germany actually, Cologne.
Today it's Germany, yeah. So the Maarik says the Kivan de V'makom Echad B'toyras, or the Chacham Tzvi says about the Maarik that since in one place B'toyras Taima Asiyaleh, in one place he's giving the reasons for it, the heavy rayas, and he brings proofs. And the other place he doesn't, hu hoiker. That place where he brings the proofs is the place that we rely on. The heavy came b'divrei Gemara Menachos Perchat Chelis. He brings a raya from the Gemara Menachos Daf Nun Beis. Hey minayu achrisa. Which one was the later one that we go after? Amalei Rabba Zuta Rebbe Lazar. Rabba Zuta said Rebbe Lazar Tashma, I'll bring you a raya. The Tanya. Es korbani lachmi. The rabbis par helem chulu. Upirish Rashi zal the kivan the mikra yalifla high ikr. Since he learns it from a pasuk in that other brisa, that's the main one. V'hachachroina hu. That's the second one. That's the one that was said last and the one that we rely on. Yuri Sham. V'im kain kol shekain b'chai gavna shevetchuva harich tuva. So that's even when the two places are steer, but one of them has rise and one of them doesn't.
Right, it makes much more sense to go by what has rise. That's a more clearly analyzed and delved into.
Right.
Well, let me just say one thing. To say that mitzvahs don't have reasons, they're not worth delving into, is not something serious.
Yeah, well, we're not talking here about the reasons behind the Torah's mitzvah. We're talking about the reasons behind the proof that one brings as to which psak we should paskin. Okay, so vimkein kol shekain. So kol shekain in this case, all the more so when there's just total silence in the yad. B'chai gavin shebetshuva harich tuva. In the tshuva, the Geras Teman, he goes on at length, Levayir Mekoira, to explain his proofs. Uve Sefer Vayoel Kasav Me'uma. So there, for sure, we have to follow the Geras Teman. Uke'ein zeh Kasav Atrumas Hadeshin. Similar thing the Trumas Hadeshin says. V'ayin Bach Even Oezer Siman Tzadik Vav Shekasav De'av Shadai Toideicha Sha'arash Soiser Atzmoi Mipsakav L'tshuva. That he holds, even though when the Rosh contradicts from his psak to his tshuva, Psak of Iker, the Bach holds that really we go after the psak, go after the Rosh in the Gemara there. Hainu k'shemefurish lehedya, the soistim zeh. That's only when there's a real contradiction. Aval b'kan eino mefurish. It doesn't say explicitly there's a contradiction. El demash mahachi. It just sounds like it midoloi chaylik b'psakav. I guess the Bach is talking here. The Bach is saying that this is only when there's a steer. Explicit steer, but let's say in the case that the Bach dealing with there in Even Oezer, there's no explicit steer. It's just mashma one way, from the fact that he doesn't disagree with another posik who says something. So there, the Bach says we should follow his tshuva. Yuri Sham. Move on to Kol Shekain who Keshe'eno Koisiv Klal. Kol Shekain by the Geras Teman, where he doesn't write anything in the Yad about this. El Hashmot to be Alma, just a left out thing. She'en Lidchois Al Yidei Zeh Ma'debaru Mefurish B'dvar B'tshuva. That we can't use that to override what he writes in the tshuva explicitly. Kasher Yoister Mizeh Hechli Chacham Tzvi Zal Chacham Tzvi Kanizker Le'el. We say the Rambam, the Chacham Tzvi said even more than that even when it's one has a raya, one doesn't have a raya. So here, Kol Shekain, where it's just a left out thing. Avol Yoister Mizeh, but more than that, I can say the Divrei Geras Teman Brurim. The words of the Geras Teman are the final word, even if there would be a steer. Why? Shahare b'tshuvasoi shekasav lekahal Marseille. Marseille is in France, right? Southern France.
Present day, yes. Even present day it exists.
And this tshuva, I have copy here on page 2. You can look at it. In this Sefer Tshuvas Rambam that I have, he writes that it wasn't really Marseille, it was really Montpellier. It's a different city in France.
Montpellier?
Yeah. So
why say Marseille there, Montpellier?
Because in the old editions of the Rambam it said that Marseille. The Rabbi probably had a different edition. Whatever it was, but it was the Chacham of that section of France. It was called Provence. It's a section of France that I think it was a separate country back then, and the people there didn't speak Arabic, so the Rambam wrote to them in Lashon HaKodesh. And so this is one of the only tshuvas the Rambam wrote in Lashon HaKodesh. And take a look what he says. The tshuva is really about, it says at the top, Gzeres HaKochavim, because the tshuva was about, they asked him about astrology, and the Rambam was very against astrology, but they didn't have the Sefer Yad, they didn't know the Rambam's opinion, so they asked him his opinion, and he answered them that he holds that it's total shtus. What?
Shtus.
Not about Zara, but it's like a superstition. To say that the stars somehow control a person's life. And the Rambam says an important klal there, by the way. He says that people should only believe in 3 types of things. They should believe in things that they could understand with their own logic, like math.
Yeah.
And then things that they could sense with their 5 senses, and things that they're makabel from chachamim and tzaddikim. But anything that's other than that, astrology doesn't
none
fit
of them.
Any of those categories.
We have no Masorah in the Tanakh, anything how to read the stars, or to when, neither do any Masorah about superstitions.
But then he goes on, he talks about Mashiach, because they advised us, they asked him about what he holds about a false Mashiach that was around that time. I don't know if it's the same one, maybe a different one. So he says like this, Ve'al iskei ha-Mashiach, shehigiu aleichem devarim mishmi, that things that I said reached you. They like from hearsay, or maybe maybe papers reached them. Loi kach haya ha'maisa, v'loi b'mizrach haya b'Isfahan. He says it didn't happen in Isfahan. I think that's in Iran. There was no false Mashiach there. El b'Teiman amal ish. It was b'Teiman that this false Mashiach arose. L'davar zeh, for this thing, for this matter. K'moy shtayim v'esrim shana. It was about 22 years ago. So now we see when this happened. This is being written in around the year 1193, toward the end of the Rambam's life, and he's writing back about this story that happened about, or 1195 really, 22 years after the story with the false Mashiach and Teiman. V'amar shehu shliach miyasher derech lifnei melech HaMashiach. He didn't claim to be the actual Mashiach, he claimed to be someone who's like preparing the way. V'amar lahem she'HaMashiach sham be'eretz Teiman. He said the Mashiach is here somewhere in Yemen. V'niskabtu lo anashim harbe Yehudim v'Aravim. Many Jews and Arabs also followed him. He used to wander in the mountains. Our brothers in Teiman wrote me a long letter about it. They told me his ways, whatever he did. The things that he changed about the tefillas. What does he say? They claimed that they saw wonders, miracles from him. They asked me what to do. Okay, I understood that this guy was like a little insane. Really, he was a Yirei Shamayim. He believed in Hashem, but he had no wisdom. Anything that they said he did was totally a lie. I was scared about what's going to be with the Jews in Teiman. I wrote about three booklets to them, and all these booklets together make up Yigeres Teiman. About Mashiach v'Simanav and his signs, whatever his identifying criteria, v'Simanav Azman, and the criteria of the time when Mashiach can appear. I told them to warn this man, Shema Yoivad, that he might die via Abed Kehilos, he might cause other Kehilos to die. And so then he tells the end of the story. It's interesting to read it, not negate to this, but just
I said already that the man said to the king of Yemen that cut my head off,
right,
you'll see I'll resurrect, and that'll be the biggest proof that I'm Mashiach.
Right.
And he did, and he didn't resurrect. Which I don't know what's up with this person. I don't know what kind of proof that is.
Okay, but that's what happened. That's what he says here. He says, a year later he was caught. All his followers just ran away. The king of the Arabs said, what did you do? So what's your sign? This is what you said.
My head off and I'll resurrect.
So miyad amrloi ein lecha ois gadol mizeh. The king was very happy with that idea. He said, "Yeah, if that works, I'll believe in you too." We'll all leave our Islam behind. We'll go follow you. Miyad hargoi loisayani. He killed this poor man. The Rambam says his misa should be a kapar for us. That they punished the Jews with monetary taxes there. And there are some people still alive today in Yemen, he says. So the Rebbe says here, back to the Vayoel Moshe, okay? We follow the Yigeres Teiman here. Shahari b'tshuvase shekasav l'kahal marseil shenitfas sham b'Yigeres harambam. This is what we just read, that he wrote at the end of his life, after writing all his Sfarim. He wrote the Mishnah Torah and the Moreh Nevuchim. You can prove it because you see he quotes himself in the Yad, and the Moreh Nevuchim. In the end, he brings down the subject of Mashiach. He mentions this Yigeres Teiman here. Kamay shloisha kuntresim binya melech Mashiach v'simana azman sheis barboy v'hizir oisam, and he warns them she has here zeh oisha oimer Mashiach shelo ya'abed hu ve'akehilas chas v'shalom ayin sham. V'im kain chazin and barer, we see clearly shehiskim l'chol divrei ho'igeres teman. We see he says he puts his stamp of approval on what he wrote in Yigeres Teman le'esik nusle at the end of his life. After he wrote,
1170s was the end of his life. The Rambam was in 1204.
No, but we're talking 1195 now. This letter to Marseille was written in 1195.
Right, yeah. So 9 years before Ketira.
Okay, so we see that he didn't retract what he wrote in Yigeres Teman when he wrote the Yad. That's the main psak halach. But in this case, we don't really have to know which one's the final word. There's no contradiction. We'll see the resolution of this if you look into the Rambam. We're going to, like I showed you in Siman Lameches. Ukvar kasav harash b'tshuva klal lamed aleph ois tes shamoyim hoyros mitoich divrei Rambam zal. The Rosh says whoever paskin shilas by looking into the Rambam ve'enan bekiin begemara, and they don't know the Gemara mehechan hoitzi dvarav, where the Rambam got his opinion from. Toyin lahatir o aser v'leser as mutter. They're going to permit what was aser, and they're going to aser what was permitted. Kivin she kasav sifroi b'loy tam, because the Rambam writes his sefer without any reasons, u'v'loy rai, without any proofs. So kol hakoyer boy soiv shemevin ba. Anybody who reads it thinks he understands it because he makes it sound so simple, and really it's not simple at all. Ve'eno kain she'imeinoi baki b'gemara, that if someone doesn't know Gemara, ein mevin davar liyishura, he's not going to understand the Rambam completely. Yurian sham sheherich oid bazeh vehevioi b'tshuvas harivash. The Rivash quotes this Rosh Siman Mem Daled v'shivcha moed. He praises it very much. Ubepsicha l'sefer hamoira. The Rambam in his Hakdama to Moreh Nevuchim, Kosav Rambam Zal be'atzmoi kein zeh. The Rambam himself writes this. Shekosav sham v'zel l'shayna v'lo yarois v'lo yikpois, that nobody should destroy my intentions and jump lahashiv al davar al dvarai, to like slug up my words, to contradict, to prove my words wrong. She'efshar shiyeh, because it could be. It could be what this person will understand what the Rambam is saying. It could be the opposite of what the Rambam really meant. You know, there's a famous the Maamar Techis Mesim. You know, the Rambam was accused of not believing in Techis Mesim.
Yeah.
So people have looked in the Rambam and understood the wrong thing sometimes. The Rambam wrote a whole Yigeres to prove that it's not true, to show what he really held.
Yeah.
So V'yazikenu gemul tachas ritzoisi lo ha'iloi, that he'll get punished instead of trying to help. He'll be getting punished. We see we have to really look into the Rambam, not to learn up from what he says, the opposite, what he really held. Okay, but after we learn up the sugi of the Shevuos and the Gemara and the other Rishonim, we'll be able to understand what the Rambam really meant about the Shevuos.